Hello and welcome to this next edition of the Founders and Leaders series, where we at Insight Platforms hold lively conversations with some of the entrepreneurs who are driving change in the research, technology and insights industry. I'm delighted to be joined by two members of the Conveo team today, Hendrik van Hoof, who is Chief Product Officer, and Niels, who is Head of Research and Methods. Guys, welcome to the show today.
Happy to be here.
Thank you, Mike.
Thanks for joining us. Let's kick off with you, Hendrik. Can you tell us a little bit about Conveo? What does it do? We're being explained at a dinner party in simple terms to someone who's not in our industry.
If it's someone who's not in our industry, I always say that today you've probably filled in dozens of surveys in your life already. And it's never a great experience as a participant. The data you get is just a score out of 5 or something as a researcher. And if you've been lucky, maybe you've been participating in a moderated interview, but that doesn't happen often because it's so time and cost intensive. And so what Conveo does is we now have an AI moderator that can give much deeper insights, both for the researcher, but it also makes it way more fun as a participant rather than a survey. And so our data collection is really an AI video moderator, and we've built a whole platform around that to make the researcher's life easier.
Right. Nice and simple. I think my mother would understand that explanation, so thanks. So tell me, your role is Chief Product Officer, correct? What does that mean? What do you do with Conveo?
Yeah, I think what I always say is I do everything that's not coding. And so I try to spend as much time as possible with our customers, both from sales to customer success. And then ultimately it's by talking to customers that we learn how to improve the product. And so that's basically where the title comes from. But I want to spend as much time as possible with our customers, ideally still face to face. I think that's great.
Great. Niels, your role, research and methods. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I have a little bit of history in the insights world. I know by now a little bit about the technology, but not so much. But I do know how to put together a good piece of research that leads to strategic insights. So that's exactly my role, looking at what we're doing in the more traditional environments and transposing that to this new AI environment. And it's similar to what I've always done throughout my career. I've always loved to work with the newest methodologies available in the industry.
Exciting times for adapting some of those methods using these new AI tools. Where did Conveo come from? What was the germ of the idea? What led you to start the business?
Yes, I was basically studying AI right before ChatGPT launched. And then that summer it came to market. I started working at McKinsey. And so, all of a sudden it was hot and happening. And so I was put on all of strategic AI projects, both where we worked for the C-level and board, but I also sat countless hours next to practitioners across roles and functions. And so on one of those projects, one of the use cases we really dove deep in was market research in pharma. And it's really there that I saw how manual it was, how much value is not being captured or generated because of the limits. And so it was also a use case where AI already works today, but where there's still so much room to run in the future as well. And so it's really those two insights, that led us down this path. And then we applied for Y Combinator, got in, built an amazing team around us, and the rest is history.
So Conveo is only as old as ChatGPT, is that correct?
It's younger even. We're a year and a half old. And there were 6 months before that on the kitchen table.
Amazing. So a real new era business. Niels, what convinced you to come on board? Tell us a bit about your background. You alluded to it, but tell us a bit more about what you did previously and why you were attracted to join Conveo.
Yeah, so in my former life, I was one of the co-founders and managing partners at Human8 Insights Consulting, joined the dots, that family of research and insights agencies. And there was part of the digital transformation or transition going from, let's say, postal to telephone to online digital communities. And that's always what intrigued me. And there was a little bit of automation and AI hints already then. And we already were experimenting with bots and chat bots moderating communities. And so I always felt that was an avenue that the industry was going into. And then met the founders of Conveo, a little bit serendipity wise, I would say. And we got to talk and we were very enthusiastic about the whole idea. And obviously there was a personal connection as well. And then really the smartness, and already back then, over a year ago, when I joined, I would say the product was not viable. It was minimal for sure, but not viable yet. But what it could do already had a big impression, or made a big impression on me. So I'd say those two, together with the fact that I've always liked entrepreneurship, is what drove me to Conveo, and haven't regretted it ever since.
Yeah, fascinating. And what sort of customers are using Conveo now? Is it the big brands? Is it agencies? Who tends to get on board first with these sort of things?
Yeah, it's a great question. We definitely over-index to the brands themselves, because what we try to do at Conveo is actually three things. One, we want to get efficiencies in time and cost. And mostly that's not a story about cutting costs, but it's about enabling the 90% of research that you wish you could do today, but that you just can't because of limitations. And then the second thing is generating the highest quality insights. So that's the multimodal story, insights you get across different studies, etc., that are now possible with AI. And then lastly, the impact. And it's really this impact story that's most important for brands. And that's like not only having the researcher be more efficient, but having them work with their stakeholders more easily. And we've had examples where our videos collected in the platform travel all the way to the supermarkets to get shelf space, for example. And so that's really a core focus. And that's why we are focused on brands, but agencies can use it all the same for their brands.
Interesting. So the rollout of those insights and the impact that they have, how do you see that? Do you have a professional services research team, or is that the responsibility of the client? How does that work?
Yeah, that's a very big strategic question. We're evolving there a lot as a company. So the fact is that researchers are super overworked. They have too many briefings. It's often a team that doesn't get enough love in terms of resources. And so the fact of the matter is that they often need outside support, right? And so we do provide that support. That's why we're so happy to have Niels on our team as our head of research, our customer success team as well, with Alex and Anton, who came from McKinsey with me. And so we do help our customers there. But our ultimate goal is, of course, to have our platform productize as much as possible what you would do manually today. And so today, as a company, we are expanding these services by having a network of freelancers work on our platform for the clients that actually came from clients doing that themselves. And then secondly, we are having more panels in our platform who provide their services directly to the end client without us in between.
So it's more of an ecosystem approach. Niels?
Yeah,
what were you gonna say?
Exactly. Yeah. Really, to add on to it, it's become so end to end as well. So the AI really gives you superpowers throughout the whole process. So when you set up your study, you prompt it, you can upload a document, and it generates your design. It does the field work, as was already mentioned, but also in the analytics. Even the report generation is something that's on our roadmap and is close to being released. Even that, with a click on a button, you really get to the added value quicker. So the service level that's needed is getting much, much more minimal as we go. Another element that we see is that some of our end clients are asking their agencies to use the Conveo platform because it's much more efficient, and they use it. And then whenever they don't have the capacity, their agency can kick in. So it's a win-win for everyone.
Interesting. About 5 minutes before we met here today, I'm part of a network of independent researchers and freelancers, and someone posted exactly that challenge, that their client has requested that they use a particular platform for AI moderated interviews. I can't say who it is in this company, but you can see the trend is clearly taking hold. Niels, how are you seeing the trends amongst those brand researchers evolving? What are the changes in their workflows, their attitudes? What's new with them?
A very good question that keeps on evolving, but obviously I think the AI transformation is driving. And what that means is clients are really looking to make sure that they have the relevant answers at the right moment. that is accelerated by AI for sure. And then, as Hendrik already mentioned, a lot of researchers at the brand side are pressed on time, also don't have the needed resources to hire talent. And AI, and when I look at Conveo, I always say it's like you're hiring talent, but it's actually by means of buying technology. Those are really, they're a little bit intertwined in terms of trends, but it's about getting to that market solution as quickly as possible still at a good quality level. And AI is definitely pushing that, as no other technology, in my opinion, has pushed it ever before.
One thing I would add there is there's a lot of talk about, is AI going to replace researchers, etc. I think the opposite is true, right? There's two things that are happening. One, the world's changing faster than ever. New products, new health trends, social media. So the need for research has exploded and will continue to explode these next few years. And second, what Niels was also alluding to, and we talked about this before, all of the project management work, etc., that is crunching together from weeks to a few days. And so as a researcher, the demand is infinite for sure. You have all of these powerful tools, so you will just be stepping up in terms of the strategic thinking, working with your stakeholders, etc. Like I was a researcher myself at McKinsey, I would never have been as excited as today to be a researcher. So I think the impact there, as you're going to have as a researcher, is just going to get much larger.
It's really interesting because the ambition and the vision is more empowerment for the research teams that are there, more democratization of research skills, and the ability to actually generate more consumer insights. So on the one hand, it feels like a very positive future. On the other hand, what I think we're seeing quite a lot of is headcount reductions, budget freezes. Some teams I've seen, especially in North America, but in Europe as well, who are very constrained right now. How do you think we square that circle? Is that pressure from the top of organizations to bake in some of the efficiencies you're talking about too soon? Is it because of maybe cultural differences? Are there different groups of people in research roles who are not quite on board with this new way of working? Niels, what's your take given your pedigree in the industry?
Yeah, there's obviously other factors at play here that may cause budget freezes or headcount reductions. So it's not all because of AI. I do believe that there is still an adaptation to what the new technology brings, and that we will still need human interpreters, storytellers, decision makers to use the information and the insights that AI generates. What I do believe that as human beings is we will need to adapt our skills. What I mean with that is I do think that people that are purely focused on processing and tedious jobs that a machine can do, that you will have to shift to that added value. So that's something I think also as human beings we will need to adapt, and for sure companies at the top that are making decisions still need to make that adaptation if you want. Will there be an impact? As with every technology, obviously it leads to efficiencies, and it's a tool to do things more rapidly and to, as every technology, to replace that. But my conviction and our conviction at Conveo is that people do solve problems in the end. Technologies don't. Technologies help you to get to the solution quicker or get exposed to more and better solutions, and then you still have to make the decisions. Yeah. One of the things we see is that even how end-to-end Conveo as a platform has become, it's always good to have an expert look at it and interpret it and really guide it. And then sometimes it boils down to little tweaks, but you're getting at a higher level for sure.
I think what's an interesting addition there is I was sitting in a call with one of our biggest customers yesterday, and they were saying that it was one of the first times that an insights platform or the data collected traveled all the way to the revenue generating functions of the company. And so I think what happened in these past few years, and I've written thousands of reports myself in a PDF that gets stored in some shelf, never to be looked at again. Data didn't used to be super sexy as it can be today with videos, etc. And so the reason why we're so focused on having maximal impact generation is because you get the visibility, because you drive the top line growth, and because you have that impact. And then, you would have to be a fool to argue against the CMI department, right? So that's why that's such a core focus for us to really drive that impact, because without it, indeed, you are at risk. And we don't want that.
Yeah. Okay. Fascinating. I think whatever the short-term opportunities, I think we're in for some significant change in the way that insights teams work with partners, technology, and their own stakeholders, aren't we? What are some of the big, exciting? I'll ask you two questions first. What are some of the really big opportunities that you see in AI-related tech? What are the things that you're excited about? And then, do you see trends that are being perhaps overhyped? Is there something that is you think you're a bit more skeptical about? Let's start with the upside first. What are you particularly excited about in AI capabilities? Hendrik, start with you.
Yeah, so I think there's two things that immediately pop into my head. One is the data collection. There's a lot of room to run still. Now we have AI moderated interviews, which is basically based on text. You have a video layer, but we are actually pioneering in multimodal analysis, where you analyze things people show, their emotionals, brand detection, etc. So true multimodal analysis, as if you're in the room with the person, but you speak any language and you have perfect memory from that. So that opens a lot of new doors. And then second, after that step, there will be live moderation based on what the AI sees. So then if you open your fridge and you would say, hey, I eat very healthy, the AI can literally say, okay, I see your fridge is stocked with Coke. Maybe what's the dissonance there? And so that's really important, because that's what you do as a researcher and while you go to a person's home today. And so there's a lot of room to run there. And then the second thing on AI is really putting it all together in a platform that enables you to work closely with your stakeholders, etc., reimagining the insights function enabled by AI. And I feel like it's a bit like a faster horse in a car. We're discovering, hey, what could the car look like? But there's a lot of faster horses being trained today still. So I think the second one is something to be explored together with the client, and that's what makes me so excited. And I'll pass on the other question to Niels.
Yeah, maybe to add to that is the talent component of AI. I think I alluded to it earlier as well, is that you're able to scale your team without scaling your team, because you're buying that talent through technology in a way. And that opens up a lot of doors. Everybody's talking about better, faster, cheaper. And yes, that's true, but that's for us a table stake, because it opens opportunity even much more. And with that, I mean that, for example, what we see is, and that's a good thing, companies are doing more research because they have this capability, as well as it frees up time. So they're doing research in instances where otherwise they wouldn't potentially do any research. And now at least they get next to the intuition, which is still important and which they normally then use in these instances. They do get real human insight on top of it because the AI enables that. And that's something that really excites me. It's good to enlarge the footprint of insights within company decision making. Obviously agree with what Hendrik said, but I would add that onto it. On the multimodal, which is indeed we're seeing very good applications bridging what people say in the transcripts, but also how they say it and what they do. So we've got numerous examples where people go in a shop along or open their pantry and they're saying, oh, I use these products, or I use this here. And it's an ocean spray, for example, drink. And they don't say what the brand is. They don't say what the SKU is, but the video picks it up, and putting those two together is something that's truly transformational. So that's also, as a researcher, collecting or being able to collect more and broader data without necessarily having to probe all the time it's not an efficiency for me. It's really a transformational aspect.
Then, Mike, I think the second question you asked was an overhyped trend, right? Is that right?
Yeah. Before we move on, I'm really fascinated by the multimodal capabilities you're talking about. I think the truism is that only 7% of meaning sits in the semantic language. So when you're capturing transcripts and you can identify that, and it's always felt that although a lot of these tools are speeding up the process, becoming faster horses, like you say, that 93% of meaning that might live in a facial expression or a tone of voice or the context or the environment has been lacking. That, I would agree, certainly sounds like an exciting area to explore. And the other two, just to recap, you were talking about the ability of technology really to extend the impact of insights into organizations and then almost to act as a multiplier of team expertise. It sounds like, Niels, your point about adding additional skills. Yes, some really big trends. Thank you. Sorry, I stopped you in full flow. You were going to tell me about your take on what's an overhyped trend.
I think Niels and I are like very much in agreement that the synthetic users that are purely based on synthetic information, so it's already baked into an LLM, that's a very weird concept to us. Given that today you can talk to so many people and you can have these in-depth conversations, why would you skip that step entirely, right? And if you look at the research funnel, for example, in your innovation funnel, you have quant all the way at the end to make your decision. You have qual steps in between, which maybe go from 2 qual projects to 10 or 20 because you can iterate so quickly. There is a place for synthetic data in the beginning and to do your brainstorm, get some quick back and forth with the AI. But what we built into our platform is actually personas that are synthetic, but based on hundreds of real interviews. And so I think that the purely synthetic, I'm skeptical of, but I'm very interested to see where it goes. That's for sure. What do you think about synthetic, Mike? I'm curious. You must be hearing about it all the time.
I see new startups in this space every day, and I think we have possibly made it unhelpful with a single label for all these things, because what you're describing is first-party data, high quality, original human inputs, multimodal potentially to train new models, and building personas on the back of that is a very different story to just generating a bunch of AI bots out of general purpose models. And there's huge risk in doing that, because I've seen posts where somebody fired up 1,000 strong synthetic polling audience using nothing more than the base training data in the GPT-4 model. And 90% of that audience said that they would vote for Kamala Harris in the last presidential election. So there are obviously lots of challenges in the approach that you've described, just using base training data. So that's interesting. Niels, your background with working extensively with communities, do you see that as a potential source, or that kind of rich human data as a good source for building personas and synthetic audiences?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's all of that on steroids, really. And we've got numerous clients that said, oh, this is amazing because we now can truly get into people's homes, because normally when we do that, we do an in-home ethnography. People put everything, they clean out everything, they put everything neatly next to each other. This opens up the life as it is, really. And people are flipping their camera, walking around, showing their pantry, showing their laundry space. So it's a very natural human input. And I do believe that we need that to avoid this inbreeding or hallucination or flatlining or being stuck in its own world, which is what we just referred to in terms of one of the dangers of AI. And so I see enormous potential for that type of research, which is, in our opinion, also goes beyond what now everybody's talking about, qual at scale, right? Of course, that's there. But this goes beyond, because it provides really a rich, real human insight approach and perspective.
Yeah. You used a term there that I struggle with. I think maybe you do as well, because you said it almost with air quotes, qual at scale. I think we're obviously struggling with a new paradigm and old language. Do you have any new ways of describing this that you think could become more appropriate than this qual-quant divide or qual at scale? Any other language that you think we could be exploring?
I think we're both dying to go. No, we have conversations about this like all the time, because if you think about it, what I've been most surprised about is our customers telling us like, hey, 90% of the research we wish we could do, we couldn't do before. And it's not a budget constraint, it's a time constraint. I didn't know that when we started, and I went in with a completely opposite view, banging the drum about qual at scale. And people applaud you in a call or they seem excited, but that's not at all what makes you tick as a researcher, right? You have all of these projects, you want to make better decisions, you have your marketing team breathing down your neck, or your R&D team for new concepts. And so I think instead of qual at scale, what's way more impactful and important is just rapid iterative qual and having it drive your product iteration, your marketing, drive down your risk. We've all seen some advertisements lately that are risky and that have real impact. So I think qual at scale, instead of relabeling the term, I would almost say that it's the irrelevant as a whole, right? And I'd much rather talk about localized research with 50 people in every market, rapid iterations. So I don't know, Niels, you have a billion thoughts as well. Fill in.
Yeah, and to build on what you're saying, that's the iterative part of the tools like Conveo is super important. We see clients that within a study or really across studies and tied into each other, they do foundational behavioral understanding. There's brand engagement components. There's concepting and optimizing. And you can iterate very fast and compound knowledge. What our platform allows to do, for example, is if you've done 3-5 studies, you can talk to all of these studies at once and extract data even from 3 data collections ago. So that's where really the added value and the promise of Gen AI lies. And one of our clients has literally told us that because of this video-based approach and this qualitative approach at a large scale, they were able to hit the shelves and convince retailers much more quicker than ever before. I know there's the traditional divide between quant and qual. I think they have to be hybrid in the end because your decisions shouldn't be made only on quant or qual data. Obviously, because of the fact that AI can process unstructured data so quickly and structure it for us, we're looking at a hybrid form of methods, if you want. Yeah, but I haven't invented new words.
You're smart. This is your opportunity to coin a new industry term.
It isn't it? I should have thought before I asked that question and had something in my back pocket. I'm afraid I don't. I can criticize the use of qual at scale from the sideline, but I don't have anything better, unfortunately.
Exactly. No, true. Yeah.
No, good. I like the examples actually you're providing, this impact, being able to condense the processes, being able to get product on shelf quicker, being able to get insights at the sort of revenue generating part of the business rather than it being bottlenecked in further up the chain. So really compelling examples, I think, of how this really drives value rather than just smarter ways of doing the research process itself. Let's step back a little bit and talk, I think, about your experiences as entrepreneurs. Now, you've got slightly different paths. Interestingly, Niels, you obviously have successful business that grew internationally, long pedigree. Hendrik, you've been growing a business in this sort of vertical takeoff period where things seem to change every week in terms of capabilities and AI tools. Let's start with you, Hendrik. What are some of your big lessons that you've learned and that you want to share over the last couple of years?
Yeah, so the Conveo is 1.5 years old, right? So I'll be humble in what I know so far, and there's a lot I definitely don't know. But I think the biggest learning for me is the biggest value we've created as a company is just by literally sitting with our customers and asking them even a question like, hey, don't think about Conveo at all, but what is your role like as a researcher? And that's when these stories come out of, 90% of the research we couldn't run today. We didn't know that. Like literally, because I'm such an outsider, and like it's also not that like Niels is a practitioner for years in all of these different industries. It's so different across industries, etc. So I would definitely say that the highest signal you can get is still being in the room with the researcher. It's very different in B2B versus B2C. And that also, by the way, goes to Conveo, right? If you have the resources to talk to people and visit them in their house, by all means, do it. We never want to replace a real conversation because that's so powerful. So I think that's one. Second is, the engineering talent has to be paired with market research talent, and you can't have one of the two. So there's like agencies who maybe outsource a bit of the development and you can get something started pretty quickly, but the tech evolves so rapidly. If you can't develop quickly in-house and you compound your knowledge there, it doesn't work. And the reverse is definitely also true. You need to infuse your platform with market research knowledge, which is why Niels is so critical. And I think those are really the two things. Like combine a great team with all the relevant knowledge you need. Don't outsource it. And really listen to the people you're trying to serve, and don't come don't build your own ideas because you've thought about it for 2 hours or even for 2 months or 2 years, right? Build what your client wants.
Yeah. Okay. Great lessons. I think very interesting what you're saying about needing both of those components, the product expertise in-house and the research expertise. Maybe this is a question for you, Niels, because you work with market researchers for a long time. Do you think there's a good opportunity for market researchers to transition into more of that product management role? Do you think that's where some of them could evolve their skills to be that hybrid between the research expertise and the technology development?
Yeah, it's a very good question. I haven't thought about it that way, but absolutely yes. And especially because as a researcher and a methodologist who wants to keep rigor and you want to deliver quality insights, you recognize immediately when an AI technology spits out something that doesn't make sense, or when it spits out something like, oh, this is a really good idea, whether it's a way of asking a question or whether it's an analytical way of framing it. So in that sense, being able to translate that to say, this is the need, and then the feature is developed by technologists or programmers, that's where the match needs to happen. And exactly, I can only confirm what Hendrik said. I love it when I'm in front of the client together with our tech developers, and I don't have to say anything. I just lean back and the client gives and says, this is how we work. And they are eager to listen, which is the first step. But then also in a couple of weeks, there's a solution to it. And I think that's something that we feel in the market is that we have the technology capability, but we also speak the language. And part of that language comes from our clients and being it's obviously the core of marketing, but being very customer oriented in that perspective is really what sets us apart.
Yeah. Yeah. Great. I think the evolving roles of researchers, it's not just about those working in-house in client teams, those working agency side. There's lots of transition potential, let's say, for people in the industry.
Yeah. And maybe to add to that, indeed, there's also an extra layer, which is, are you able to speak prompt? So you're sitting with AI, you're sitting on this huge pile of answers, but to extract them and to combine them smartly, you have to be able to, not that it's rocket science, but it's a different way. It's not a Boolean way of asking things. So speaking prompt, whether to extract data or instructing the AI platform to ask questions in a certain way, that's also a skill that I think we need to develop a little bit. It's not necessarily product or it's not necessarily tech, but it is learning how to use a new technology, basically.
Yeah, great. And you have decades of experience building, growing research business with some tech at the heart of it. What are the lessons that you take from that experience? Or are you giving friendly advice to Hendrik and the team to say, we tried this, we need to be careful not to go there, some mistakes maybe that you shared? What can you say from that experience?
Yeah. I am in the founding team and I say to both of them, it's your company. I'm here. I have an opinion, probably more than they want to hear, but I'm here for you. And I feel that there's respect and they do that. On the other hand, I'd also want them to make quote unquote mistakes. If I think it's a really big one, I'll do it spontaneously. But it's one of my lessons learned is that you need to learn from your mistakes because you need them to succeed. And also, to be honest, I'm not at an age or an experience level where I have all the answers either. That's my second learning. Is I've always learned from people like Hendrik. He's obviously much younger, but not in spirit. And as you could tell, he's a very smart guy. So learning from people that are younger is what keeps me going and is definitely something that, I learned. And what I feel at Conveo as well, which is also what we had at Humanate and Insights, I was at my best when the people around me were intrinsically smarter than I was, because that keeps me higher up as well. So talent is for sure a big element in this. And then finally, Hendrik alluded to it as well, develop a product that people want, that your clients want, innovate with relevance. Sometimes I see innovations also in our industry and I'll go like, yeah, it's nice. It's a great idea, but do people really want it? We are sometimes also surprised. We build a feature and then we put it in front of a client and the client goes, it's a lukewarm reaction. Well, it's a good asset test, but then don't pursue it, because otherwise you're making products and services that people don't want. Talent, learn from your mistakes, And then innovate with relevance is probably my lessons I would convey.
I think,
Beautiful.
Mike, when you asked the question, there's been plenty of times when Niels has had the beautiful opportunity to say, I told you so, and I told you so 5 to 10 times already a year ago. Yeah, letting us learn from mistakes. Maybe it's stubbornness and he's just saying it in a kind way, but that definitely happens.
Now I have this image of Niels sitting back, rubbing his hands and just waiting for the item to crash. Okay, guys, this has been a wonderful conversation. Thank you very much. We've covered a lot of ground. We talked about developments in AI, the capabilities, this intersection of research and technology, some of the broader trends in the industry, the implications for workflows and teams, client side, researchers. It's been a great discussion. Thank you both very much for your time. For everyone else,
Thank you, Mike.
you can find much more about Conveo at some of our virtual events. If you're listening to this after they've taken place, don't worry. All of the Conveo presentations, webinars, and demos will be available to watch on demand. They are taking part in our September 2025 Demo Days event and in our Insights to Action Summit in October 2025 as well. You can also find out much more in our AI guide. So the Corporate Researcher's Guide to AI, which will feature use cases and examples from some aspects of the Conveo platform. Niels, Hendrik, thank you very much indeed. We hope we'll see you again shortly. We hope for those of you in the audience, you'll join us for more episodes of our Founders and Leaders series. Enjoy the rest of your days wherever you are. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.